So this is Monterey Avenue School. Now it's a remedial high school, but when I was here from 1965 to 1968, it was an elementary school. This is my classroom beyond this fence in 5th and 6th grades. Two of the worst years of my entire life spent with Miss Wilda Johnson, the wildebeest. She was, well, without going into any detail, she hated boys. I had to stay after school almost every day. She had a real hate-in for me. Just made my life a real living hell. Anyway, but to jump back a few years, there was one day when I was doing something wrong, and the teacher, not Johnson, it was somebody else. This was when I had first gotten to the school in 1965. She had asked me to leave the classroom and sit out here, which I did, and I was sitting out here. And then I noticed the lunch bell rang and all the students went to lunch and I was still sitting out here. Turns out she forgot all about me. So I think at some point I tapped on the window or something, and then she looked at me and had this surprised look on her face and told me to sit down in my chair. And I told her that I was hungry. Could I have my lunch now? And she said, well, you won't be having any lunch today. And I remember feeling very put upon, and that was my introduction to Monterey Avenue School. Not a good introduction. So, yeah, school's kind of sucked. I don't have fond memories of this place at all. And it was a really great day when I was able to leave finally. You know, this whole visiting schools and talking about them thing is kind of a miserable experience, you know that? Sort of reliving childhood slights and agonies and whatnot. Okay, I'm on the other corner of Monterey Avenue School. Observe this bush, this hedge. Well, this kind of hedge was all around here. It comes all around here. And it completely hid this metal surface. Let's see if I can get a shot of it. Ooh, I can't really. But there's a metal surface in there. And one night in 1968, my friend Richard Springer and I, having read Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, we decided to reenact the sequence where Tom greets Huck and he meows outside, and they gather one another and they head out at midnight. And this is where they encounter Indian Joe and the plot ensues. But anyway, so Richard Springer and I were out and around at midnight here in Burbank in this neighborhood. And we went to our secret meeting place behind the hedges over here, and we sat down and we swore a dreaded blood oath. That's right, we actually pricked our fingers with needles, and we signed on a piece of paper that we would never reveal the site of the secret location. So I guess I'm breaking the blood oath by making this video. And we later skulked around the neighborhood some more here around the school. It was fun. I was 12 years old. Okay, what can I say about this? Well, the classroom with the big windows that you could see in the distance there, that was Mrs. Massaud's room. That was my 4th grade teacher. I had to repeat a class. I think it was 5th grade. I don't recall. But anyway, I was in that class in 1966, early 66, I remember, during the Gemini moonwalk, spacewalks and all that. That was taking place when I was a member of that class. But this is another part of Monterey Avenue School when it was an elementary school. Oh yeah, there's a boys' bathroom. See where that red door is? There's a boys' bathroom close to that. You can't really see it. But one time I had a basketball in a urinal, and I was pulling the flush handle, and Mr. Derrick, who was the janitor, came in and said, "You bastard." And I remember thinking, oh, is that how it's pronounced? I thought it was bastard because that's what my mom had always called my dad. But the word was bastard. That was the first time I heard it. So you learn the most interesting things in school. So, Richard Springer and I are skulking about the Burbank streets and the houses around our elementary school, which was right here. There's the play lot of Monterey Avenue School. And this house was always considered the haunted house of our neighborhood. It was set back deep, it had this huge front yard, and in 1968 it was kind of overgrown and poorly kept up. So Richard and I were playing around in there. We had flashlights, and all of a sudden we turned around. We noticed a figure standing right here holding a flashlight and shining it at us. And it was this old lady. Turns out she lived in the house on the corner, and she demanded, "What are you two doing here? Get out of here before I call the cops." So naturally we left, and that spelled the end of our haunted house exploration of this place. I remember there was a panel van that said Jewel that was parked in the driveway for like decades. Okay, so we've got the Magnolia Park School. It's a building that's here, but in 1968, when I was going to school here, it wasn't here. And the bike racks were parked. My bicycle was always parked right back here in the corner. And because I always stayed after school, Miss Johnson saw to that, I would always trudge out of class. And after writing, "I will not talk during class" or something 1,000 times, I would trudge across the schoolyard to where my bike was parked, and I was the only person in the schoolyard, and my bike was the only one left in the bike locks, the bike racks, and this was my daily lot. Here there used to be this is sort of a garden now, but back then this was the where the rings and the gymnastic stuff were. I used to play here a lot. I remember sitting up on top of the bars one time and watching a fire up there in the hills, one of Burbank's innumerable brush fires. Now you can't see it, but this is where we always used to be grouped for the class photos, this grassy area here. And inside Monterey Avenue School, this was the all-purpose room here. And I remember a night in 1965, let's see if we can get a shot of Monterey Avenue School. We're not going to get anything. Okay, so through these doors, this is where the main office was. We did a blue and gold banquet where I was inducted as a bobcat. And the idea was they pinned the bobcat pin on you upside down, and then you're supposed to do some good deed to turn the bobcat pin right side up. So what I did was, the tradition was, my parents were parked here in the car, and what I did was I opened the door for my mother so that she may enter the car, and that was my good deed to turn my bobcat pin around. Well, fast forward many years, and when my son went through his bobcat ceremony, he repeated the tradition. He opened the car door for his mother, and he was able to turn the bobcat pin right side up. I would like to be able to say that my grandsons will be in Cub Scouts to carry on that tradition to a third generation, but we're not doing Cub Scouts anymore. That's kind of wrecked for various reasons I'm not going into. So that's a walk-around tour. Well, what's that? Why is it running? That's my walk-around tour of Monterey Avenue School.